स्वरा ब्रह्मणि निर्भाता पदाम्बुजे हृषिकेश पदाम्बुजे अखण्डं चित्तमावेश्य लोकान् अनुचरन् मुनि स्वर ब्रह्मणि निर्भाता ऋषिकेश पदाम्बुजे अखण्डं चित्तमावेश्य लोकान् अनुचरन् मुनि
स्वरा ब्रह्मणि निर्भाता
स्वर ब्रह्मणि निर्भाता
ऋषिकेश पदाम्बुजे
ऋषिकेश पदाम्बुजे
अखण्डं चित्तम् आविश्य
अखण्डं चित्तमावेश्य लोकान् अनुचरन् मुनि ब्रह्मणि निर्भाता ऋषिकेश पदाम्बुजे अखण्डं चित्तमावेश्य लोकान् अनुचरन् मुनि
स्वर ब्रह्मणि निर्भाता
स्वर ब्रह्मणि निर्भाता
ऋषिकेश पदाम्बुजे
ऋषिकेश पदाम्बुजे
खण्डं चित्तमावेश्य
अखण्डं चित्तमावेश्य
लोकान् अनुचरन् मुनिः
लोकान् अनुचरन् मुनि स्वर ब्रह्मणि निर्भाता ऋषिकेश पदाम्बुजे चित्तमावेश्य लोकान् अनुचरन् मुनि. Okay, please repeat. Svara Brahmani in spiritual sound.
spiritual sound
Nirbhata, placing clearly
resting clearly
before the mind.
before the mind
Rishikesha,
Rishikesha
of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna,
of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna,
the Master of the senses.
Master of the
Padambuje, the lotus feet.
lotus feet,
Akhandam,
Khandam,
unbroken.
unbroken,
Chittam,
Chittam,
consciousness.
consciousness,
Avesha,
Avesha,
engaging.
engaging,
Lokan, all the planetary systems.
all systems,
Anucharat,
Anuchara,
traveled around.
traveled around,
Muni,
Muni,
the great sage Narada Muni.
the Greek says Muni.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Jai. The 7 musical notes, sa, re, ga, ma, pa, dha, ni, are used in musical instruments, but originally they come from the Samaveda. The great sage Narad vibrates sounds describing the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. By such transcendental vibrations, such as Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, he fixes his mind at the lotus feet of the Lord. Thus he directly perceives Rishikesha, the master of the senses. After delivering the Haryashvas, Narad Muni continued traveling throughout the planetary systems, his mind always fixed at the lotus feet of the Lord. Purport. The goodness of the great sage Narad Muni is described herewith. He always chants about the pastimes of the Lord and delivers the fallen souls back to Godhead. In this regard, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has sung. Narad Muni. It'll take time to sing, so I'll just read it. But beautiful bhajan. Narad Muni bajai vina Radhika Ramana name nama amani udita hoy bhakata gita same. Amiya dhara varishe ghana shravana jugale kiya bhakata jana saghane nache bhariya apana hiya. Madhuri pura asaba pashi matai jagata jane Keha va kande, keha va nache, keha mate mane mane. Panchavadana Narada Dhari, Premera Saghana Rola, Kamalasana Nachiya Bole, Bolo Bolo Hari Bola. Sahasranana Parama Sukhe, Hari Hari Boli Gai, Nama Prabhave Matila Vishwa Nama Rasa Sava Paye. Shri Krishna Nama Rasane Puri, Purala Amara Asha. Shri Rupa Pade Jachai Iha Bhakati Vinoda Dasa. The purport of this song is that Narad Muni, the great soul, plays a stringed instrument called a veena, vibrating the sound Radhika Ramana, which is another name for Krishna. As soon as he strokes the strings, all the devotees begin responding, making a very beautiful vibration. Accompanied by the stringed instrument, the singing seems like a shower of nectar, and all the devotees dance in ecstasy to the fullest extent of their satisfaction. While dancing, they appear madly intoxicated with ecstasy, as if drinking the beverage called Madhuri Pura. Some of them cry, some of them dance, and some of them, although unable to dance publicly, dance within their hearts. Lord Shiva embraces Narad Muni and begins talking in an ecstatic voice. And seeing Lord Shiva dancing with Narad, Lord Brahma also joins, saying, "All of you kindly chant, Haribo, Haribo." The king of heaven, Indra, also gradually joins with great satisfaction, begins dancing and chanting, Haribol, Haribol. In this way, by the influence of the transcendental vibration of the holy name of God, the whole universe becomes ecstatic. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, when the universe becomes ecstatic, my desire is satisfied. I therefore pray unto the lotus feet of Rupa Goswami that this chanting of Hare Nama may go on nicely like this. Lord Brahma is the guru of Narad Muni, who is the guru of Vyasdev, and Vyasdev is the guru of Madhvacharya. Thus, the Gaudiya Madhva Sampradaya is in the disciplic succession from Narad Muni. The members of this disciplic succession, in other words, the members of the Krishna consciousness movement, should follow in the footsteps of Narad Muni by chanting the transcendental vibration Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. They should go everywhere to deliver the fallen souls by vibrating the Hare Krishna mantra and in the instructions of the Bhagavad Gita, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, and Chaitanya Charitamrita. That will please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One can spiritually advance if one follows the instructions of Narad Muni. If one pleases Narad Muni, then the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hrishikesha, is also pleased. Yasya prasadat bhagavat prasadaha. The immediate spiritual master is the representative of Narad Muni. There is no difference between the instructions of Narad Muni and those of the present spiritual master. Both Narad Muni and the present spiritual master speak the same teachings of Krishna, who says in Bhagavad Gita, Manmana bhavamad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. Mame vaishyasi satyam te pratijane priyoktivo. Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma shucha. Always think of me and become my devotee. Worship me and offer your homage unto me. Thus you will come to me without fail. I promise you this because you are my very dear friend. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. Om Jnana-timirandhasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Gurave Namaha. Just 1 second here. Must be some imbalance. So I thought this would be an appropriate verse for the occasion. Srila Prabhupada, as he writes in this purport, we are all in the line of Narad Muni. And therefore, following Narad Muni's example is our prime duty. He says, the members of the Krishna consciousness movement should follow in the footsteps of Narad Muni by chanting the transcendental vibration of this Hare Krishna mantra. So the Narada Muni, as we know in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam and in so many Vaishnava literatures, he's traveling all over the world and all over the universe teaching Krishna consciousness. And sometimes he goes into very comfortable spaces to do that. He'll be received by Maharaj Yudhishthir in his court. And other times he goes in very um, unclean or dangerous places, right? Just like when he went into the forest to deliver Mrigari, then it was a very dangerous situation there. There was a hunter and he was half killing animals. And who knew what kind of reaction Mrigari would have towards him, right? We know the end of the story, so we understand that, oh, everything worked out very nicely. But in the moment, he was walking out of the path and going to see and seeing half-dead animals that were killed by a hunter, which means that things were very potentially very risky, right, in the middle of the forest, very dangerous. And so it really depends. It's up to Krishna whether Krishna gives a devotee an easy circumstance or a very difficult one, whether he gives him a very large audience or a very small one, whether he gives a devotee a lot of immediate success or a lot of struggle. And we see this in Narada Muni's example. We see this in Srila Prabhupada's example. Sometimes Narada Muni, he addresses very great sages with an audience of thousands, right? And other times he goes into the forest to just liberate one person. And not everyone can see what is going to be the long-term effect of that, right? Just like when Narada Muni addresses, when he's guiding great souls like Maharaj Yudhishthira, for example, telling the story of Prahlad Maharaj, then he's in the court of a king, and everyone knows this is a very significant lecture, very significant class. But when he's going to speak to Kayadu, the mother of Prahlad Maharaj, right? It's in his ashram, it's a small place, and he's speaking to just one person. And yet the effect of that is extraordinary, right? Not only Kayadu, but the child within her womb, Prahlad Maharaj, is transformed as a result of that teaching. And his example then becomes one of the most important examples of devotional service in the history of the world. So we never know, right? Some things, there's two kinds of events in this world. Those events that are heralded as grand. People know that it is historical, right? So a prime minister stands up to give a speech. Everyone knows that this is going to be significant. So all the media has their cameras focused on him, and all the reporters are taking notes, and there's so many people who are assembled there to listen. Other heads of state might come, right? So these are heralded events. They're events that are announced, that are advertised, that are well known to be significant for the history of the world. And then there are those events that are unknown, that are unheralded, that no one knows are going to be significant. They say that when a hurricane begins, then it begins with the flutter of the wings of a butterfly, right? Somewhere, something happens that causes just a little bit of, what's the word? It changes the equilibrium of the weather, right? Just a little something, because everything has to begin from something, right? So that big storm begins with something else, some change in the wind movements, which begins with something else, some change in temperature. So they say that a hurricane might begin with the flutter of the wings of a butterfly, right? And no one knows. No one knows when they see. A lot of the time, a butterfly is just something very beautiful for those who are looking in a garden. But who knows? That very pretty, simple sight might produce a hurricane one day. So those kinds of events, the unheralded events that change history, are sometimes greater, sometimes more powerful than the ones that are heralded. The ones that are heralded often come at the culmination of a long process of change. Things are changing, and then someone stands up to take credit for it. We have now accomplished this major thing, right? So in some sense, what's important has already happened. But the most important things are those things that there's no one to take credit for them, right? They enter into society in a way that no one even notices, and they gradually change the very structure of that society. Srila Prabhupada called this in like a needle, out like a plow, right? You go in like a needle, it's very, very easy, very smooth. When you come out like a plow, everyone's like, where did this come from? Right? Very unusual thing. So something very similar happened when Srila Prabhupada came to Boston. Right? His travel was totally unheralded. When he left Calcutta, then at that point, his son Vrindavan was there to see him off. And Captain Pandya on the ship of the Jaladuta, the captain of the Jaladuta, he was there to receive him very warmly. But otherwise, there was no one there to herald his departure from India, right? It was just one more of many people who would cross the sea. And 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 uh, and one more of many thousands, millions of immigrants who would come after the Immigration Act of 1965, right, to the United States. I mean, how many, even before 1965, how many immigrants had come to this country by ship, right, into New York Harbor, passing the Statue of Liberty. So one more penniless um, uh, gentleman from India, who's going to herald it, right? It's the flapping of a butterfly. So many people, so many butterflies flap their wings all the time. Who notices, right? Maybe someone might notice and say, "Oh, that was beautiful," but otherwise, no one announces it with bells and gongs and conch shells. Prabhupada stepped onto that boat, and he was on a mission for his spiritual master, but he also did not know what the result of that mission would be. Right? He says that I do not know, my Lord, why you have brought me here. Right? He knows his mission, but he doesn't know, am I going to be successful? Am I not? What does Krishna desire for me? Right? But as he's crossing, as that ship is going around, there's every reason why the why that journey may not be successful. Right? There's every reason for its lack of success. The first big reason, of course, was health. Srila Prabhupada's health was not very good at all. Actually, when Prabhupada first left Kolkata, he was in his diary, we can read, he was doing quite well. He was quite happy and feeling a sense of strength in finally fulfilling the instruction of his spiritual master. And the ship, it went from Kolkata to Colombo, Sri Lanka. And Prabhupada writes that he was very eager to go see the city of Colombo. In fact, he was on the ship and he wanted to go out and see, and he didn't know how to navigate the city or how to get about and so on. So he specifically asked the captain. He said, "Will you take me around?" And Captain Pandya was a very nice man, and he said, "Yes, of course." And he took Prabhupada all around the city, and Prabhupada notes in his diary that he saw many nice office buildings, he says, hotels. He notes one particular hotel, I forget its name. He was very impressed by it. He said the streets were very clean and nice and good. He was very impressed by the city, and he was taking careful notes. And this is a practice that Srila Prabhupada would continue well into his time in the United States, taking careful notes about the quality of the culture and the audience and so on. Even when Prabhupada came to New York City, he was writing letters back to India. One of the letters he wrote was to Srimati Sumati Morarji, the owner of this India steamship company, who gave him the ticket to come across. And he said, "I'm very carefully observing American culture to see what is their response to India. He said, he said, last night I even attended a Bharatnatyam dance. And he writes that this is not usual for a sannyasi, but I wanted to see what is their reception of Indian culture, right? So he was very carefully taking notes. And he said, I think their reception, they're very eager for this, right? They're very interested in this. So anyway, he went to Colombo, we toured the city, wrote about it. And then he came around the southern Cape of India and came up um, to Cochin in the state of Kerala, so on the west coast. So he's now circumnavigated India. And in Cochin, the ship was anchored off the coast of Cochin for a couple of days. And he celebrated Janmashtami festival there on the ship. And he doesn't write what the delay was, why the ship couldn't dock into the port of Kochi, but it stood out there for a couple of days. I think they were waiting for something or another. And then finally they docked in Kochi. And there also Prabhupada got off the ship and he took a tour of town. And he knows that the environment of Kochi is very much like Bengal. He liked it a lot because there's a lot of palm trees and humidity and warmth. And we see here another parallel with Narada Muni, that Narada Muni also, whenever he travels, we find that he's very carefully observant of the environment in which he's in. Even from his previous life as a child, it says, Bhagavatam says, that Narada Muni traveled through all the different towns and villages and principalities. He went through forests and mountains and rivers, and he saw everything. One verse describes all the beautiful things he saw, and the next verse describes all the dangerous things he saw in the natural world. And Prabhupada, in the purport to those verses, he writes that a sannyasi travels for two reasons, he says. One is to develop strength of mind, and the second, to cultivate dependence on Krishna. Strength of mind and dependence on Krishna. Such a nice thing, right? When you travel on your own, a sannyasi travels alone. This means that you have to be strong mentally. You have to be able to withstand a lot of difference, a lot of change, a lot of inconvenience, unexpected results, right? And for dependence on Krishna, because you never know what's going to come your way, right? These days, there's a lot more predictability. But back in those days, you could be walking down a forest path and dacoits would come and, knock you unconscious and take everything you have, whatever little you had. Or you can go to a place and not speak the language and not know anyone and just have to depend on whatever food someone brought to you, like Madhavendra Puri did in the marketplace, right? So it was very risky. I mean, still today in many parts of the world, but yeah. So so this is strength of mind and dependence on Krishna, he says, for the reasons for traveling. So we see Prabhupada was doing like this. He was appreciating, he was remembering Krishna and appreciating what he was watching and taking very careful notes for the purpose of assessing the suitability for preaching. Actually, the word for preaching in Sanskrit is prachar, right? And the literal meaning of prachar is to go forth, to travel forth. Chara comes from the root chat, which means to walk or to travel. And pra means toward. So it's literally translated in terms of the English word outreach, right? Outreach. You reach out. Pra means outward or toward someone, and chara means to walk or to move. So we have to reach the audience that we're trying to achieve, right? To reach out to. And for that, we need to understand and observe them very carefully. So as Prabhupada went, then he arrived in Cochin, he did the tour of Kochi, but something very, very important happened in Cochin that we often forget about. When Prabhupada docked in Kochi, then yes, that is where he got 5 trunks of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatams, right, that were loaded onto the boat. And Prabhupada oversaw their loading, and that would be the foundation of the hurricane that he was about to bring, right? Is those books. that were loaded onto the dock. That day, right, would then transform the world very soon. When Prabhupada left Kochi and left the boundaries of India, is when he crossed a juncture of life and death, right? Prabhupada remembers it as an odyssey, as a struggle. He describes it as a great struggle between life and death. And it happened physically between the crossing between India and the rest of the world, right? And it happened personally as a result of the 2 heart attacks that he had 2 days in a row. He doesn't write anything in his diary on those days except after it's over, right? We see there's a thick black line that goes through those 2 or 3 days. And then at the end of that, Prabhupada writes, we have undergone a great struggle between life and death. And he says that need to be addressed elsewhere. So it seems Prabhupada at that point was not ready or feeling strong enough to write the whole experience. But he says we must discuss this at some other point because it was such a significant moment. And at that point, we see in Prabhupada's diary that he is feeling a great sense. Yes, here also. Thank you, Prabhu. He's feeling a great sense of, a need, a desire for protection from Krishna. After those days are past, things start to shift. The skies seem to brighten, both metaphorically and literally speaking. Metaphorically, in the sense that his mood lifts, and he feels Krishna's protection for several reasons. One is that he had the famous dream where Krishna came in a boat, pulling the Jaladuta like a tugboat, pulling the Jaladuta with all the incarnations and avatars, and reassured him that his protection was there. And so that gave Srila Prabhupada a great sense of confidence that Krishna was here and protecting him. But also the waters became a lot smoother after that. The Mediterranean Sea, Prabhupada liked very, very much. He was waking up every morning at 3 o'clock in the morning, and he was reading Chaitanya Charitamrita. And he even mentions that the moonlight is very beautiful in the morning. So he was out on the deck, it seems, of the ship, and he was seeing the light of the moon at 3 o'clock in the morning on the Mediterranean Sea. And he mentions that he sees the coasts of Algeria and Malta and Morocco as he's going past. And he says, Chaitanya Charitamrita is my greatest solace. It's my greatest joy at this time. He writes, I'm greatly missing that famous line. I'm greatly missing my lordships, Shri Shri Radha Govinda, Shri Shri Radha Gopinath, and Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan. My only solace is this reading of Chaitanya Charitamrita. I'm very far, he says, from my home, Sri Vrindavan Dham. So he's reading Chaitanya Charitamrita. And in addition to Chaitanya Charitamrita, he's reading specifically the story of Krishna and Kaliya from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Because you see, Kaliya is a resident of the ocean, and he's remembering Krishna's subduing of Kaliya at this particular time. He also, non-coincidentally, he celebrates the appearance day of Lord Varaha at this time. And Lord Varaha is famous for rescuing the earth from the bottom of the ocean. Right? So all these things are happening. And for the first time, there's a little bit of a sense that his journey might be significant. Krishna is coming in a dream, and these different events are happening. He's feeling Krishna's protection and relishing Chaitanya Charitamrita. And something else significant happens, which is when they enter the Atlantic Ocean, and the captain is prepared from the Mediterranean to the Atlantic is usually a very choppy crossing. Especially, this is the month of September, right? And what's the month of September in the Atlantic is what? It's hurricane season. It's a part of the hurricane season. It's kind of it's its peak, right? It starts in July and ends in November. So this is a very like, and Prabhupada does discuss that there were a couple of storms along the way, but somehow the journey is very, very smooth, and the captain is not expecting this at all, especially not at this time of year in the crossing, right? In the middle of September. So this is very unusual, and he says the captain notes that this is unusual, and he notes the fact that this may be because of his passenger, Srila Prabhupada. Also, during this time, the captain's wife, Mrs. Pandya, she's an astrologer, and she reads Prabhupada's future. And Prabhupada doesn't say what she said, but he notes in his diary that he's very thankful for her astrological prediction. So apparently it gave him also some confidence that this journey was meant to be, that his life was not going to end on the sea, right? That there was something significant coming. So there were some little indications that this flutter may be something significant, right? But when the ship comes into Boston and the immigration agents board the ship, Prabhupada mentions in a later lecture, he says that he the customs agents, they ask him how long he plans to stay. This is a typical question at immigration. How long do you plan to stay? And Prabhupada said, I didn't know what to say because he didn't know how long his mission was meant to last. Whether it was meant to last or how long it was meant to last or what it would mean to fulfill the instruction of a spiritual master. This is something I think important or significant. We receive instructions through Srila Prabhupada's books, through the words of the spiritual master, through other devotees. We receive instructions, but we often don't know what it means to fulfill that instruction, what the full outcome of it will be, right? Just like Prabhupada's instruction actually was quite specific and quite narrow, right? It was you write in English and you publish these books in English, you preach in English. But what that meant, right? Publishing the books in English, what that meant, that it would mean hundreds of temples, that it would mean, farm communities, that it would mean disciples, that it would mean beautiful deity worship, that it would mean Rath Yatra festivals. That was all revealed by Krishna over time, right? And to the extent to which that service would develop. And so much of that is also dependent on the sincerity of the devotee, right? Whether they want to make a mountain from something that is apparently very small. That instruction could have been fulfilled by going to the West, distributing a few books, and coming back. But what it turned into for Srila Prabhupada was something extraordinary, right? And that demonstrates his determination to take the instruction and turn it into something magnificent. There's a nice example of this in the Mahabharata, right? When Dronacharya is teaching all the young Pandava boys and the Kaurava boys, then one particular night, he's awoken by the sound of someone shooting arrows. And when he wakes up and he goes and he sees, it's actually Arjuna, who's in the night and in the complete pitch dark, and he's shooting his arrows at a target that he cannot see. And he's using sound to estimate the distance and the target. Yeah, and Dronacharya's he's stunned, he's amazed. He's thinking, wow, how did you? He said, I have never taught you this. This is a very, very difficult skill to master, to shoot by hearing sound only. King Dashrath was also expert at that. So he said, how did you learn this? And he said, well, because I was eating food with Bhim, and Bhim used to get hungry very regularly. So in the middle of the night, he would wake up and he had to have some food. So he was there at night, and Arjun woke up and he asked Bhim, he said, it's completely dark. How do you know where to put your food? Like, how does the hand know where the mouth is? And Bhim said, you don't know? Even the hands have eyes. And with that, Arjun thought, oh, if the hands have eyes, then why can't, if he can get the food to the target, why can't I get my arrow to the target without seeing? So then he took what he had learned from Dronacharya and what he had learned from Bhim, which Bhim was not trying to teach him about archery, but he learned something from him. He put those two things together and was shooting in the dark. And when Dronacharya saw this, he said, I vow that you will be the greatest archer in the world. Right? That's what gave him the confidence that Arjuna would be Sarvashresht Dhanurathara, or the very greatest archer in history. So when he gave that promise, Ashwatthama, his own son, got really upset. And he said, Father, I'm your son. Why did you not make that vow for me, that I would one day? Am I not a good student? And I forget if it was Ashwatthama or it was Duryodhana. I think it was Ashwatthama. But anyway, and he says that you're, of course, a very good student. Whatever I tell you, you take that and you practice it and you perfect it. He said, Arjun is of a different caliber. He takes what I gave him and he builds it, he extends it into something extraordinary, right? In other words, there's that student who takes exactly what he's learned and masters it. He's told, do this, and he does that. And there's that student who takes what he's learned and says, what is the full outcome? What is the full consequence of this? Where does this develop? How does this go, right? What is going to be the result? How can I build upon this? And turns it into something extraordinary. And Srila Prabhupada was that kind of disciple, right? He, in this purport of describing of Narada Muni, Prabhupada says that this is the instructions of the spiritual master. We have to follow in the footsteps of Narada Muni, take those instructions. So Prabhupada showed what's taking those instructions meant. He could have understood the instruction narrowly and held it to that. And he's told me to write in English. So I'm going to go write in English and I'm going to distribute some books and come home. But Prabhupada took that instruction and, like Arjun, he built something extraordinary from it, which is why he became one unique individual in history, right? He became 1 in a million in history because of that fact. He became an extraordinary disciple. It doesn't mean that other disciples are no good. They're also, like Dronacharya said, you're all very good students. You follow my instructions. But he went beyond the um, the expectation, yeah, into something extraordinary. And so Prabhupada, he says that when the customs agents came, he said, I didn't know what to say. So I told them 2 months. I'll be here for 2 months. He felt that was a reasonable time to test the waters, to see what happens, right? 2 months. And then he said every 2 months he would come back to the same pier and he would go to the immigration office and he would get his visa extended for another 2 months. And he says after 1 year, they said, no, no more. You can't. No more extensions. So then at that point, he had to get a special sponsorship visa that allowed him to get a green card and or long-term visa stay. But for 1 year, he was coming back to renew his visa and thinking another 2 months. Let's see how this works. In fact, Prabhupada said I would go to the pier and he would check the schedule for return ships going back to India because he had a return ticket. He had a round trip ticket, right? But Krishna had other plans. Krishna had other plans to go. And particularly like Narada Muni, right? When Prabhupada writes in this purport that like Narada Muni, we should travel everywhere and we should simply chant the Hare Krishna mantra. He's speaking that from experience, right? It's not some theoretical idea because that's all he had was the instruction of his spiritual master and the holy names. So that he did exactly that. He sat down not with a veena, but a set of kartals, and he was chanting Hare Krishna. When Narada Muni was given this veena to use in singing, that veena was a blessing from the Lord himself to Narada Muni to perform this particular service. And he uses it to this day to travel all around the universe, singing Krishna's holy names everywhere he goes. Right? Narada Muni. Vajaya Veena, this Veena. And it becomes his greatest friend and his greatest instrument, his tool, in order to spread Krishna consciousness everywhere. So Krishna gave Srila Prabhupada a Veena as well. And these were his books. Right? This is where it all started, is the instruction to write, to publish in English. His books were that Veena that were loaded up in Cochin. And they were that like a, Prabhupada called it the Brihat Mridanga, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur called it a Brihat Mridanga. So Krishna gave Prabhupada Mridanga, right? He gave Narada Muni a Veena. The point is he gives each one of us an instrument. Right? We all have an instrument that Krishna gives us. We just have to decide, A, are we going to use it for Krishna? And B, are we going to be like Ashwatthama, or are we going to be like Arjuna? Right? To what extent? What are we going to do? What's the what result are we going to try to achieve from that? There's one letter where when the devotees were preaching for some time in San Francisco, and then from San Francisco they moved to Berkeley, and they wrote to Srila Prabhupada. They said, Prabhupada, we moved to Berkeley and we found that the preaching here is very nice. It's very effective. And Prabhupada wrote back saying, because you have made some effort, therefore you are finding that the preaching is very nice. You will find that wherever you make the effort, the preaching will be very nice. Any place, he says, you make the effort, the preaching will be very nice. So we might think that we have a small role to play in Prabhupada's movement, right? We might think, I just do a little thing, right? My service is I mop the temple. My service is I just, I do one program in the evenings and 3 people show up and that's my service, right? So I've got a small role to play. I'm not one of the big ones. But we have to realize that there are no small roles in Krishna's service. Every role is potentially a big role, right? Because every butterfly is potentially the source of a hurricane. And we don't know. We don't know, right? When Narada Muni was preaching to Kayadu, of course he's Narada Muni, so maybe he knew. He did know. We know he knew because he describes it in Bhagavatam. He tells the demigod that this is someone special. But we may not know, right? And it may be an audience of one. It may be an audience of one person. But it could change the world, right? It could be the flutter that caused the hurricane. And that hurricane may take 2 generations to manifest. We don't know. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was usually not preaching to an audiences of thousands. He was writing songs and books and providing a vision for the future, that one day people from all over the world will come here to Vrindavan. He was pointing out the spot of Mahaprabhu's appearance. But that impact, the impact of that vision, took 2 generations to manifest into what we have today. The journey that Prabhupada made across the ship, across the sea, took years to manifest as something extraordinary. So there's no small parts to play. There's no small instruments to play. My spiritual master, Hanumat Preshaka Swami, is trained in improvisational theater. And he describes how one of the ways that they teach you how to act, right? Devotional service is acting. It's we practice how to be a devotee, right? In the mood of the residents of Vrindavan, eventually. And he says how in improvisational theater, one of the ways they get the actors to really understand and embody the roles that they play, to become those persons, not to just pretend, but to become, is he says he said there was I forget who it was. There's one famous director, and he would have everyone in the audience, all the actors, he would have them do an exercise. So, for example, there's the king is there, and there's two guards on either standing on either side of the king, right? So it's a scene where the king is clearly the or the prime minister or the president, whoever, right, is clearly the center of that scene, and whoever else he's talking to. And there's guards, and these are typically called extras, right? They just kind of they're extra. Anyone can stand there and be a guard. But this director, he would have those guards before the first practice write several pages on who they are and their character and what just happened before this scene in their lives and what they're thinking. So if, for example, you're one of those guards and they're for months, nothing has been happening and you're completely bored and you're just kind of standing there distracted. That's one particular mood, right? But what if the week before there was an attempt to assassinate the king? What if there was an attempt on his life and he missed just by a hair? And your best friend, who's also a guard, got injured in the process or even killed. In what mood will you stand there then? It's going to be the most important job in the world, right? Even though you're just a guard, you're an extra. But at that moment, then, it's the most dangerous thing and the most difficult thing to do, is to protect the life of the king. And it becomes the most important part for you as that guard. It's a matter, literally a matter of life and death. It's a matter that everything significant that's happening here is dependent on me. Because if I cannot protect the life of this king, then whatever else is happening is not going to happen. Right? So the point is, there are no small roles in devotional service. There's only small actors, right? And we don't have to be one of those small actors because we recognize that every role in devotional service is significant, it's powerful, and it has the ability to impact the world, to change the world. When Prabhupada got off that boat in Boston and in New York, he says, no one was there to receive me, particularly in New York, because in Boston, the captain and he walked around the town. But in New York, he said, I did not know whether to turn left or to turn right. He says there was no one there to receive me. And that was, of course, literally true. There was no one there to receive Prabhupada. But from a spiritual perspective, there were thousands of people waiting to receive Prabhupada, right? They did not know that they were waiting for him. They did not know that they were receiving him, but they were desperately waiting for him. They needed him. Krishna had sent so many, he said, where he would give his classes and he would say to all his young, he said, my American boys and girls, said, Krishna has sent you all. My spiritual master, he said, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. There's a very famous Vyas Puja lecture that Prabhupada gives on Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's Vyas Puja Day, where he becomes very emotional. And he says that my Guru Maharaj has sent all of you to assist in this mission, to assist me in my service to him. Right? So all of those people were waiting for him, were receiving him, right? They were there waiting for his arrival. We were waiting for his arrival. And still, there are millions more who are waiting for his arrival, whether they recognize it or not. So we never know We never know. Someone stepping off of a boat, a child being born in this world, a butterfly fluttering its wings. We don't know the spiritual consequences of such unheralded events. The events where someone is wanting to stand up and claim credit for that, those are usually events that have already passed their expiry date, right? They're already no longer significant. The fact that someone is standing up and saying, I did this is about me, right? Those that are more powerful are the ones that enter society with powerful ideas that change the direction of that society without anyone knowing what's going on. And that is what happened that day, September 17th, 1965, when Prabhupada stepped off the boat. No one knew what was coming at them. Right? No one knew. And yet it changed the world, right? It brought ideas into the society that even those who may not think of themselves as committed to Srila Prabhupada have been affected by the tide that he brought. And that's where you see the impact of such great ideas. So, following in Prabhupada's footsteps, right? Krishna gave Narada Muni the Veena and his beautiful voice. Krishna gave Srila Prabhupada these books, particularly Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Krishna has given each one of us something. He's given us a Veena of some kind, an instrument of some kind, some capacity, some ability, some particular skill. And while we are certainly not Narada Muni or Srila Prabhupada, we each have the capacity to play a significant role. We're not going to be the best actor or actress. That's for Radha and Krishna. Right? They're always best actor. But we can be best supporting actor. Right? We can play our role. We can get that award. The best guard ever. Right? The best extra ever. Because every role is a very significant role when we're talking about the long arc of history that will far outlive us. So I'll stop there. Thank you very much for your attention. I wish all of us a very, very successful and happy festival this weekend, full of remembrance of Srila Prabhupada and his wonderful, wonderful activities and his great historic moment of arrival here in Boston City 60 years ago. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Hare Krishna. As we all know, a child's prodigy and a gifted Vaishnava to our ISKCON community as such. Very rare and fortunate to have him at ISKCON Boston. A devoted Vaishnava scholar and practitioner, PhD from Oxford at the age of just tender 22. He now serves as a Charles Red Chair of Religious Studies at Utah State University. He's very well known for his books and translation on the Bhagavad Purana and Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy, and for harmonizing academic excellence with deep devotion to Srila Prabhupada's mission. He's very well connected to the academic, the literats or the dignitaries, and he's trying to channelize the ISKCON teachings or making them favorable in the academic world. His contribution is humongous for ISKCON community. We need people from all walks of life, and especially in the academic world. And Prabhuji's contribution is highly commendable. So we are very fortunate to have him here along with his dear father, and who brought him up. So we can, and his contribution is equally great because he had such wonderful children, and also he was running the Utah temple where there was no center as such. He brought the Boise, and then from there, then it's now a fledgling and very a big temple where so many wonderful Vaishnavas has sprung up from there, and following on the footsteps of the children and all the grandchildren as well. So that shows the success of their contribution to ISKCON community. We are very, very fortunate to have these wonderful this entire family today for our festival. What else we could have asked to have this wonderful family to grace this occasion. Thank you from the core of our heart. We would like to express our gratitude to both the entire family, for coming us here. We are very, very grateful to you. And we look forward for your suggestion and for your participation in this program. Also, we take this opportunity that please do consider coming to Boston. We'd love to have you. Yes, and these are the moments where we can get such a rare suggestion. But in future, if there is any other moment, any other opportunity, please do consider. Thank you for accepting our invitation once again. Dear devotees, please loudly chant from the core of your heart. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Thank you. Beautiful. Okay, Hare Krishna. So now, dear devotees, as you all know, today is a very one of the biggest days for us because it's the beginning of our festival. We have in our FMI the Chanting session, the Kirtan festival, and also another event which we have an interfaith event. So there are two events which are going on. So interfaith is an invitation only, and those who can sit for only 2 hours, they are allowed. They can sit there in that room. But rest we have the chanting continuous kirtan events. Kirtan will be going on in the big auditorium. We have almost 800 to 900 people registered. So it's growing. It's not stopping. People are pouring in from different places and also from yoga community and other places. They are actually showing interest. So not just only the devotee community, but even other people from outside also. They want to join our festival. We are happy to have such a wonderful audience tonight of the program. So please be there for this festival, and we'll explain about tomorrow. We'll have the next 2 days also. We'll have festival Saturday and Sunday. Same place we'll have Saturday evening festival, and Sunday we'll have a boat festival around time. So this is the program for the entire details. Please go to sp-arrival.iskonboston.org.